Exclusive contracted novel by Feilu Novel Network. Anti-Japanese War. Marshal. No, please call me a great power. Traveling through the 21st year of the Republic of China, he became Zhang Xueming, the second young officer of the Fengtian Army. Start by binding the check.in system. Successfully signed in and obtained 1 American Infantry Division. Successful check.in, congratulations on obtaining the Type 59 main battle tank production line. Successful check.in, congratulations on obtaining the MiG.21 fighter jet factory. Successful check.in, congratulations on obtaining the aircraft carrier battle ***. Successful check.in, congratulations on obtaining a 1,000,000-ton steel base. Successful check.in, congratulations on obtaining the mushroom egg production base. Under the leadership of Zhang Xueming, the state of Xia achieved comprehensive leapfrog development in both military and industrial aspects. One day, mushrooms will rise in the air on the islands of the Eastern Ocean. Old Mao Zi, Eagle Sauce, and John Bull all trembled under the iron hooves. When he looked back, he realized that he had become a great power. Feilu Novel Network reminds you that this novel and its characters are purely fictional. If there are any similarities, they are purely coincidental and should not be imitated. Chapter 1. I'm not running anymore, you guys should run. You are listening at novelfull.audio. September 18, 1931. The shocking September 18 incident broke out both domestically and internationally. Under the command of Zhang Xiaolu, hundreds of thousands of Northeast Army soldiers abandoned the entire 4 provinces of Northeast China without firing a single shot. On September 19, the Japanese army successively occupied important towns such as Fengtian, Siping, and Ningkou. On September 21, the 2nd Division occupied Kyrgyz province. On November 19, the Japanese army captured Qiqihar. On December 25, the Northeast Army began to retreat from Jinzhou. On January 3, the Japanese army formed the 38th Brigade and occupied Jinzhou. On January 5, the main force of the Guangdong Army withdrew from Shanhaiguan to Guanyi. Whether as a traveler or as Zhang Ergong's current identity, Zhang Xueming felt immense shame. But what can he do when he has just crossed over in less than a day? After all, he is only Zhang Xueming, the son of Zhang Ergong, and the younger brother of Zhang Xiaolu. In the Northeast Army, he has neither real power nor fame, just a playboy. Who would listen to his commands? But really not doing anything. Despite being a young master Zhang heir, he will still be able to live a luxurious life in the future. But he couldn't just watch the Japanese invaders ravage this beautiful country like this. At this moment, a resolute expression flashed in Zhang Xueming's eyes. I must do something myself, let alone I may not be able to change. I need to get off the car. Second young master. What's up? Zhang Xueming looked at the driver with cold eyes and said in a calm tone, I don't want to repeat it again. Creak. As the vehicle stopped, it also caused the rear troops to stagnate and quickly caught the attention of the forward convoy. In front of a luxurious Buick bridge car, a thin and weak young man in military uniform stepped out of the car. There are 3 golden triangular arrows hanging on his shoulder badge. He is currently the Rear Marshal of the Northeast Army, Deputy Commander of the Republic of China's Land, Sea, and Air Force, First-Class General of the Army, and also his elder brother Zhang Xiaolu. Watching Zhang Xueming get off the car at the same time, Zhang Xiaolu frowned and approached him, whispering, What's wrong? Is it time to get off now? I didn't see how many troops are behind me. Looking at the imposing Zhang Xiaolu, Zhang Xueming looked directly at the person in charge of the Northeast Army. Big brother, I won't run anymore. If I want to run, you can run. Zhang Xiaolu's eyes fixed, and a hint of anger flashed in his eyes. What do you mean? Zhang Xueming clenched his fists tightly and suppressed his anger, saying, Father has handed over the 4 provinces of Northeast China and millions of elderly villagers to you, but you have not fired a single shot and want to hand over this beautiful land to the Westerners. Big Brother used to be so spirited, but now he doesn't even have the courage to face the Japanese invaders, allowing the whole country to curse us cowards. Do you know what will happen after the Westerners occupy northeast China? They will create one tragedy after another and slaughter our people. They will endlessly plunder the resources of northeast China. They will imprison the thoughts of the people, promote their culture, until northeast China becomes their territory. At that time, both you and I will become sinners of history. If you want to run, you can run. I am willing to stay at Shanhaiguan, even if I am the only one, I will die on the road of charge. Tell the Westerners that there are men in northeast China. I believe there will be millions of me in the future, just like me, who will charge forward without hesitation on the road to expel the Japanese invaders, so that even if I die, I can rest in peace. Zhang Xiaolu was stunned by these shocking remarks and looked incredulously at his suddenly unfamiliar younger brother. Subsequently, anger surged to the sky, and his face turned red with anger. Many other soldiers and officers of the Northeast Army who heard these words were filled with tears in their eyes, which were tears of humiliation. Suddenly, Zhang Xiaolu burst into laughter, and then his face turned cold. Okay, that's great, Zhang Xueming. You're the only man in the entire Northeast Army. Do you think I don't want to resist? But what are we using now to resist? If you don't sit in my seat, you don't know how much pressure there is. Zhang Xueming mocked and said, don't worry about not having firewood to burn while leaving the Green Mountains. It seems that the Zhongdong Road incident back then has already shattered my courage. Zhang Xiaolu glared angrily at the round stool and pointed at Zhang Xueming like an ox. Okay, Zhang Xueming, since you are so manly, then you can stay at this mountain customs and resist the Westerners. As long as you, as a man, can guard the Shanhaiguan Pass, I, as the young commander, will serve you later, Zhang Xiaolu angrily said to the surrounding officers and soldiers, and you, who thinks you're a man. So stay on your own and let future generations sing praises to you. After speaking, Zhang Xiaolu coldly glanced at his younger brother and left. Zhang Xueming's words have already made him feel a hint of killing intent. Since that's the case, let him die at this mountain customs. Since childhood, this younger brother has been arguing with him for everything, and this time he has been so disobedient to himself, which has completely angered him. Looking at the distant figure, Zhang Xueming breathed a sigh of relief. The reason why he said this just now is because suddenly his golden finger has been credited. Let him see the hope of guarding Shanhaiguan and reclaiming northeast China. Even if it means falling out with this big brother. But I didn't expect there to be unexpected gains. He said, hold the Shanhaiguan, let the Marshal be him. This is something many people have heard. Instead of letting the Northeast Army decline under his elder brother's control, it is better for him to lead the Northeast Army to become bigger and stronger, and create glory again. Chapter 2. Sign into the Miqi Infantry Division. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The check.in system has been activated, but today's check.in was not used. Do you want to proceed with check.in? Sign in. Successful check.in, congratulations to the host for signing in and obtaining 1 American Infantry Division. After seeing this check.in reward, Zhang Xueming knew that the end of the little devil was coming. He roughly browsed through the organization, troops, and weapons and equipment of this mech, and exclaimed that it was impressive. The Miqi Infantry Division governs 3 infantry regiments and several directly affiliated units. Each infantry regiment has around 3,700 soldiers, and there is also a division directly under the artillery unit. It has 3 light and 1 heavy artillery battalions, equipped with a total of 36 M101 105mm howitzers and 12 M1A1 155mm heavy howitzers. The M1 Garland semi-automatic rifle is even more standard. Its firepower is definitely overwhelming for the current little devils. With their easy defense of Shanhaiguan, it may not be difficult to counterattack the 4 northeastern provinces in the future as they continue to sign in. There were not many soldiers and officers who were willing to stay with Zhang Xueming to resist Japan in the end, with only over 300 people arrested. But their ability to stay at this time also shows their determination. He immediately formed a new battalion and appointed a colonel officer, Huang, as the commander of the new battalion. At the same time, the American Infantry Division obtained from the check that IN was directly summoned. Summoned successfully, the infantry division will enter Shanhaiguan within an hour. Sure enough, dozens of minutes later, the commander of the new battalion, Huang, hurriedly came over and looked at Zhang Xueming with a strange expression in his eyes. "Second young master, a large army is marching towards our Shanhaiguan pass, and the sentry report says it's you. Your subordinate." Zhang Xueming nodded and said, "That's right, let them go. Just hand over the defense of Shanhaiguan to them, and you can also merge into the new division. You can become a regimental commander." Suddenly, a hint of excitement flashed on Huang Yi's face and he said, "Yes, second young master, I definitely won't embarrass our Northeast Army." When the new 1st Division arrived at Shanhaiguan, the defenders of the new 1st Battalion couldn't help but be stunned. Looking at the tanks, armored vehicles, cars entering the city, and the dragging cannons, I couldn't believe my eyes. "Second young master, this is too brilliant." After seeing this scene, Huang murmured. When it was early in the morning, Zhang Xueming, who was waiting to sign in, completed his check that IN again. Successfully signed in, congratulations on obtaining the number of times a general has been summoned. The summoning of generals is limited to summoning generals of the current era. As long as the summoning order is issued, the generals will come on their own. Seeing this, Zhang Xueming couldn't help but smile with joy. He has no shortage of soldiers and equipment, only generals who can fight. Soon, a goal was locked in his mind. Compared to the Huangpu legitimate lineage, Huanran, also known as Baitao, is a miscellaneous army. Being able to turn a miscellaneous army that neither father nor mother loves into an elite army also demonstrates Huanran's ability to govern troops. Of course, the main thing is that Huanran's reputation is not prominent now. After all, he is just a brigade commander of a miscellaneous division. Digging him over won't catch the attention of the bald head. His main target now is the little devils outside the pass, and he doesn't want to be held accountable by bald heads for the time being. Huanran came very quickly. After hearing about Zhang Xueming's actions at Shanhaiguan, he quickly packed up and headed north without saying a word. Although the consequences of leaving without saying goodbye are serious, everything will wait until we finish fighting the little devil. The check that IN on the 3rd day arrived as scheduled. He had good luck this time. Successful check that IN, congratulations on obtaining a heavy artillery battalion. Heavy artillery battalion. This is truly a good thing. When he saw the equipment of this heavy artillery battalion, his face couldn't conceal his joy. This battalion is equipped with M1240mm heavy cannons equipped by Eagle Sauce during World War II. The gun weighs up to 21 tons and has a maximum range of 23 kilometers. It can be towed by heavy tracked vehicles. A total of 12 such large caliber heavy cannons were equipped. Cooperating with the artillery of the new division, it is completely possible to hang up and fight the little devils in the artillery fire. The next day. Report to second young master, Huanran has come to report and assist you in killing the Japanese invaders. We swear to live and die together at Shanhaiguan. After seeing the figure standing at the door, a hint of joy flashed in Zhang Xueming's eyes. This is the first anti-Japanese general to join him, although his reputation is not well known now. But after encountering this bull, don't worry about this 1,000-mile horse not showing its strength. Zhang Xueming immediately stood up and said, "Welcome Huanran to join our team." Huanran's heart of fighting for the country will always be remembered by Xueming. The second young master is our model. It was only after hearing about his deeds at this mountain customs that I decided to go north to resist Japan. After exchanging pleasantries, Zhang Xueming gave him a detailed account of the current situation inside the Shanhaiguan Pass and the situation outside the pass. After hearing the existence of the new division, Huanran was immediately shocked and unable to speak. Not to mention anything else, this firepower configuration alone is already comparable to Western powers. With this army, why worry about not achieving the great cause of resistance against Japan? I plan to establish the Northeast Anti-Japanese Command at Shanhaiguan, and you will serve as the commander of the new division. Upon hearing this appointment, Huanran was immediately moved beyond measure. I didn't expect to get such a high regard when I first arrived. A scholar dies for his confidant, it seems that his choice is not wrong. He immediately stood up solemnly and said, "Please rest assured, Commander. I, Huanran, will never disappoint Commander." When Huanran saw his new division, his expression was similar to that of Wan Yi, and even more shocking. Even the elite Central Army of the nationalist government does not have such luxurious equipment. He was simply stunned at the sight, and at the same time, he was grateful that he had not come to the wrong place. Knowing that the Japanese offensive was approaching, he restrained his shock and threw himself into his role. And a plan was quickly formulated. Chapter 3. Explorations from the Little Devil. You are listening at novelfull.audio. At the combat meeting, Huanran convened officers at or above the regimental level to attend, while Zhang Xueming sat in the upper seat. Standing in front of the military map of the entire northeast region on the wall, Huanran began to recount his plan. According to the currently collected intelligence, the mixed 38th Brigade located in Jinzhou took a train south in the early hours of last night and has now arrived in the Suizhong area. Suizhong is only 60 kilometers away from Shanhaiguan, and along the Beijing-Fengtian Railway, the Japanese army can launch an attack on Shanhaiguan at any time. According to the commander's request, it is necessary to completely annihilate the 38th Mixed Brigade and achieve a resounding victory, informing the whole country that the Japanese invaders are not invincible. So I decided to divide this battle into two parts. Attack and defense. First, the 1st Regiment will build the first defense line about 10 kilometers in front of the mountain customs, and the 2nd Regiment will build the second defense line about 5 kilometers. Priority should be given to consuming the Japanese army's active forces, while also luring the enemy deep and guiding the Japanese army to the area of Taozhuang. The 3rd Regiment concealed and stood by in the Jiaoshan area outside the pass. When the Japanese invaders entered Taozhuang, they immediately gathered the encirclement and launched a general attack. Quickly annihilate the Japanese invaders' 38th Mixed Brigade in the area of Taozhuang. The combat plan arranged by Huanran is relatively conservative. After all, they are facing the elite of Dongyang, and it is better to be cautious when both sides have not played against each other. And this can actually minimize the losses of the new division. This combat plan has been unanimously approved. The new 1st and 2nd Regiments moved towards Mengjiang Temple and the Zhejiang area half an hour later, and began excavating their positions. In January, the outside of the pass was still icy and snowy, and the progress of site excavation was relatively slow. But fortunately, the engineering barracks had a lot of equipment, but in just over half a day, the embryonic form of the battlefield group had already been formed. The layout of the positions in the Zhejiang area is also relatively simple. It is to rely on the frozen Zhejiang River for defense. The 38th Mixed Brigade located in Suizhong did not advance rashly. Because they want to wait until the Northeast Army has completely withdrawn before picking peaches, just like they effortlessly occupied Jinzhou. However, they still routinely dispatch reconnaissance planes to conduct reconnaissance in the Shanhaiguan area every day. At this moment, 2 Type 92 fighter jets are flying hundreds of meters in the air. As reconnaissance models, they are still equipped with radios. However, this radio is quite unreliable, sometimes not working, and it is also quite heavy. If it weren't for reconnaissance, they wouldn't really want to take this guy. When they were a few kilometers away from Zhejiang River, they discovered a group of people working on the snowy plain. The target of thousands of soldiers is still quite significant. Baga, isn't it said that the Northeast Army has all withdrawn? What are they doing? Position, bastard, they're actually building a position. They can easily know what a ball is doing while flying hundreds of meters in the air. Zhuemujuan, I'll fly closer and take a photo. You should report this news back immediately. After all, they are not professional two-seater reconnaissance planes, so naturally they do not have a transmitter, so they can only fly back to report. Regardless of whether he heard it or not, the Japanese pilot pushed down the accelerator and the Type 92 fighter jet accelerated forward. It is obvious that the pilot named Zhuemujuan did not hear it. He looked a bit confused as he accelerated the flight of the long plane. But he still understood his meaning. Zhejiang position. Captain Li Tianhe naturally discovered Japanese fighter jets in the sky. Air defense camp, bring it down. Around the position, an anti-aircraft position composed of M2 anti-aircraft machine guns has been aimed at the approaching Type 92 fighter jet. However, Japanese pilots clearly did not know that the danger was approaching. Still flying on its own, even continuing to lower its altitude to capture clearer images. After all, Huaxia did not pay much attention to air defense, and during the entire Northeast operation, few fighter planes were shot down. So they have also developed a personality that looks down on others. Wait, what are those? When he flew over the position for less than 2 kilometers, he suddenly caught a glimpse of some black spots next to the position. When he fixed his gaze, he suddenly felt his soul about to be scared away. A rather dark muzzle was already aimed at him. Ba ga. Just as his words fell, dense anti-aircraft firepower erupted from the anti-aircraft machine gun positions. The bullets hit the Type 92 fighter less than 500 meters high like a rainstorm. Flying slowly and low, it's even better than hitting a target. Not to mention that the anti-aircraft camp has over 60 anti-aircraft machine guns. In an instant, under the cover of more than 10 anti-aircraft machine guns, this Type 92 fighter jet was sieved. Directly disintegrating and exploding in the air, the parts are also flying everywhere. Damn it! Upon seeing this scene, Zhuemu's eyes were torn apart. I didn't expect their anti-aircraft firepower to be so fierce. This intelligence must be reported back. Captain Li Tianhe arrived at the frontline command center. At this moment, the new division commander Huanran happened to come to the front line to inspect the progress of the excavation of the position. Master, that Japanese plane has run away. Huanran waved his hand and said, "It's not a big deal. We made such a big move and discovered it. Let the soldiers accelerate the excavation progress, especially by digging more and compacting the blast holes." Yes, sir. Chapter 4. Shanhaiguan Defense Line. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. Fengtian, the headquarters of the Guangdong Army. After receiving the message from the land airline, Commander Benzhuang Fan was immediately furious. Baga, is this cunning Zhang Xiaolu preparing to go to war with the Empire? Kenji Tsukihara put down his teacup and looked at the commander with confusion. Your Excellency, did Zhang Xiaolu not obey Jinling's orders and have already evacuated Shanhaiguan? What's wrong? Beside him, Masaru Banheng and Guanar Ishihara also joined in curiously. When they saw the telegram from the 38th Mixed Brigade in Suizhou, they were all surprised. Xiuan Guiner's eyebrows couldn't help but furrow. Zhang Xiaolu saw that the situation had passed and decisively evacuated to the interior of the pass, in order to avoid engaging in a full-scale war with us, which would result in a loss of strength. Because he knows our strength, once he loses, not only will the 4 provinces of northeast China be lost, but also the Northeast Army will be finished, so he will also be finished. After all, he still has the territory of Pingjin and has a way out, so he will never dare to fight against us. But he is currently building a position at Shanhaiguan, which is indeed somewhat abnormal. Ban Hengzheng sneered and said, perhaps he wants to regain some face with us to cover up his loss of Manchuria. Ben Zhuang Fan stood up and snorted coldly, his eyes sharp as he said, then let the Empire's samurai sword shatter his last fantasy. Order the 38th Brigade to launch an attack and ask the Land Aviation Bombing Squadron to assist in the attack, and let the Imperial Heavy Artillery hit the shells inside the pass. I will use the blood of the Northeast Army to frighten those people who are ready to move. To tidy up this group of northeastern troops, a fully staffed mixed 38th Brigade and Land Aviation are sufficient. After several months of fighting, he had already known the reality of this group of northeastern troops. After receiving an order from the Guangdong Army Headquarters, the commander of the 38th Mixed Brigade, Kimura Bingtaro, smiled with satisfaction. Yaxi, according to the original plan, we should launch an attack on the positions. Today, we must break through their Jiujiang River defense line and take down Shanhaiguan. I'd like to see whether is the best in the world or our heavy artillery is powerful. The enemy headquarters in front of Shanhaiguan was established behind the Zhejiang defense line, and it is also the headquarters of the new 1st Division. Because only the closer to the battlefield can Huanran better command the troops. After all, he has just taken over this unit and has not made any adjustments. Division Commander, there is a call from the Zhejiang defense line, and it has been discovered that multiple Japanese reconnaissance cavalry units have been driven away by firepower. Huanran was taken aback by the words and then smiled, it seems like we're about to start. Let's start then. The speed of the Japanese 38th Mixed Brigade was very fast. Their large army arrived at the front of the Zhejiang defense line around 2 p.m. and had already deployed artillery firepower. The 38th Mixed Brigade was composed of the 73rd and 76th Infantry Squadrons of the 19th Division, the 27th Cavalry Squadron, the 2nd Field Artillery Brigade, and the 19th Engineer Brigade. The total strength has reached over 5,000 people, with 16 Type 91 105mm field howitzers. In addition, with the Type 92 infantry artillery and mortars equipped by the infantry squadron, there are dozens of artillery pieces. And the Northeast Army they faced, with their armor and armor dropped, was far inferior in terms of artillery fire. After the 16 Type 91 105 howitzers were ready for firing, the overall attack began. Bomb! 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 The artillery fired in unison, and the dense shells began to smash towards the position of the Zhejiang defense line. Suddenly, artillery fire erupted on the battlefield, shrouded in the smoke of the explosion. Under the scorching heat of the shell explosion, the snow on the battlefield melted into water and dripped down the wall rocks at the entrance of the blast hole. A group of over 3,000 soldiers huddled in the freshly dug gun holes and cat ear holes. His grandmother, if it weren't for not scaring them away, our shells would definitely have killed them. Feeling the intense vibrations from the ground, an officer cursed. For half an hour, under the cover of artillery fire, no one could be seen in the Zhejiang position. The 73rd Infantry Regiment launched a full-scale attack. Under the cover of artillery fire, the densely packed Japanese army stepped onto the ice of the Zhejiang River and rushed towards their positions. At the same time, their Type 92 infantry artillery and Type 11 mortar also joined the shelling ranks. Damn it, the little devils can't bully me without artillery. Order the entire regiment of artillery to bomb me. The Japanese army has launched an attack, and there is no need to hide their artillery fire. The artillery battalion under a regiment is equipped with 6 M101 105mm howitzers. Each infantry battalion is also equipped with 6 82mm mortars and 9 60mm mortars. Here are 18 82mm mortars and 27 60mm mortars. 6 M101 105mm howitzers launched a counterattack against the Japanese 2nd Artillery Brigade. The mortar, on the other hand, aimed its target at the Little Devil's infantry guns, mortars, and attacking forces. Bang, bang, bang. Dense shells almost simultaneously took off from behind a regiment of positions. Watching the dense barrage of shells, the brigade commander Kimura Bingtaro was stunned. The shells fell densely among the crowd of the 2nd Artillery Battalion and attacking troops. A dense explosion was triggered. The Battle of Shanhaiguan, which shook the whole country, began. Chapter 5. Overwhelming Firepower Advantage. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. Under a barrage of artillery counterattacks, the first to suffer was actually the Japanese 2nd Artillery Brigade. When constructing artillery positions, they do not believe they will be attacked, so they choose the location relatively casually. And as the shells fell, the 2nd Artillery Battalion began to panic. Bomb! 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 Fires rose up from the artillery positions. A Type 91 howitzer was accidentally hit directly by a shell. Under the huge explosion, the little devils had to reimburse everyone with their guns. Although the remaining shells did not cause any casualties, they caused some panic in the artillery positions. Ba-Ga quickly find their artillery positions and launch a counterattack. The artillery quality of the little devils is quite good. Soon their artillery balloons spotted the distant artillery positions. 6 M101 howitzers were located behind a reverse slope, with each cannon emitting flames and pouring shells towards the Japanese artillery positions. Baga, suppress them, suppress them. The 2nd Artillery Brigade immediately turned the muzzle, but most of the shells hit the slope or rear. Difficult to pose a threat to the artillery positions of a regiment. Without the artillery support from the 2nd Artillery Brigade, their support was suppressed by dozens of mortars. The sight of the brigade commander Kimura Bingtaro in this scene is shrouded in a veil. Why are these people's artillery so fierce? The chief of staff of the brigade, Murakami Zai, said, "It must be Zhang Xiaolu who brought all the artillery in the pass. They must have been prepared long ago. Where are our aviation troops? Didn't they say that the 2nd Bomber Squadron is coming to support us? Have they left yet?" A communication officer on the side said, "Brigade Commander, the aviation team has already departed and will arrive on the battlefield in about 20 minutes. His face only looked better when he heard this. When the bomber squadron comes, it can easily destroy the artillery of people. However, the scene on the battlefield next made his eyes crack. The attacking forces of the 73rd Squadron were divided into 3 assault clusters. 4 squadrons launched an attack on the left and right wings of the position. The densely packed Japanese army launched an attack with their hair down. When they are only about 200 meters away from the first position, countless figures emerged from the front position. The next thing to welcome them is the dense firepower. The Browning light machine gun, M2 HB large caliber heavy machine gun, and M1 Garland semi-automatic rifle began firing in unison. Da-da-da. Dong-dong-dong. Bang-bang-bang. The dense bullets hit like pouring rain. The Japanese army rushing forward immediately began to fall in patches. It seems as if a line of death has been erected on their path of attack, and anyone who crosses this line will welcome death. Under such intense firepower, the offensive of the Japanese 73rd Squadron came to a halt. But they still started to launch a counterattack with dense firepower. They diluted to suppress a fierce firepower with their precise marksmanship. At the same time, the Japanese grenade launchers also accurately threw grenades into the positions of the regiment. On the open glacier, the Japanese army had no shelter at all. The large number of casualties also made the Japanese attack somewhat unbearable. But without the order to retreat, and under the influence of the spirit of Bushido, they still braved a barrage of bullets to launch a charge. Nanny! Damn it, are they really people? How could it be? Kimura Huntaro's veins erupted, and his breath flowed out like an ox. Such fierce firepower was unimaginable to him. But soon he returned to his senses. This group of people is very cunning. They must use a large number of light and heavy machine guns together. Let the light and heavy machine guns of the 76th United join the attack queue, and give me the firepower to suppress the people. He turned a blind eye to the large number of casualties among the soldiers in front of him. The soldier's life was not worth money in his eyes. He has already boasted in front of the Guangdong Army headquarters that he will break through Shanhaiguan today. Even if the troops are exhausted, as long as he can take down the mountain customs and threaten the Pingjin region, he will still be a hero of the empire. Machine gun, the little devils here are about to charge up, hold them down, hold them down. With the suppression of machine gun firepower from the 76th Squadron, the pressure on the regiment suddenly increased. Under the death charge of the Japanese army, someone had already rushed to a distance of about 100 meters from the position. Immediately, a Browning light machine gun turned the muzzle. As the bullets tilted downwards, the rushing Japanese army was swept down one after another. Magazine, give me the magazine quickly. The Browning light machine gun only has a capacity of 20 rounds, and after a few rounds, it will be empty. Suddenly, the attack of the little devils weakened, and a famous Japanese army began to quickly retreat backwards. In less than 10 minutes, the 73rd team dropped hundreds of corpses and withdrew. However, these little devils are indeed a bit difficult to deal with. Even if a regiment has a certain advantage in individual firepower and artillery fire, there are still nearly 100 casualties. Get the 76th Squadron on board, our air support is coming soon. Looking at the distant battlefield, Kimura Bingtaro sneered. P.S. This book is a reissue and the front part was not very good, so I made some modifications. However, I still shamelessly ask for flowers and feedback. Even if the collection is not ideal and the data is still good, I can still write it down. After all, this way I know that someone is reading it, not just a single device. Chapter 6. 88 Anti-Aircraft Guns, Falling Japanese Bombers. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. 3 hours before the start of the battle. Command Headquarters of the new 1st Division. Report to the division commander, a new army has arrived at Shanhaiguan, and the commander says it's for reinforcements. Huanran frowned at the words. Reinforce them. Isn't it already deployed? And he didn't seek help from the headquarters either. What troops? The officer's face lit up with joy and he said, report to the division commander, it's an anti-aircraft artillery regiment. This is the list. Upon hearing this, Huanran suddenly stood up and took over the list of officers in his hands. Anti-aircraft artillery regiment. This anti-aircraft artillery regiment has arrived at the right time. Let them immediately deploy and hide it. If the Japanese army cannot attack the position, they will definitely send planes to bomb. Although the regiment has one anti-aircraft battalion, it is equipped with single-barreled, double-barreled, and quadruple 12.7 mm anti-aircraft machine guns. Weak in terms of air defense capabilities. But the anti-aircraft artillery team that came this time is not ordinary, they are all big guys. This anti-aircraft artillery regiment was obtained by Zhang Xueming's Czech.in early this morning. It is a standard German anti-aircraft artillery regiment. It has 3 anti-aircraft gun battalions, 1 searchlight company, and 1 transportation company under its jurisdiction. Each anti-aircraft artillery battalion is equipped with a uniform flak 36/37 88mm anti-aircraft gun. That is to say, the 88 anti-aircraft gun, which is known as a universal weapon, can both defend against air and level tanks. This anti-aircraft artillery regiment is equipped with a total of 54 88 anti-aircraft guns. This thing is used to deal with the current Japanese land and aviation aircraft, but it has a kind of meaning of killing chickens with a knife. So when Huanran saw the strange move of the first wave of Japanese attack suddenly retreating, he had a premonition that the next wave of attack might be accompanied by Japanese air firepower. Let the Anti-Aircraft Artillery Regiment and Anti-Aircraft Battalion prepare for air defense, the Little Devil's plane is coming. As expected, in less than 5 minutes, more than 10 black dots appeared in the sky. 12 Kawasaki Type 87 bombers belonging to the 2nd Independent Flying Squadron of the Guangdong Army appeared over the battlefield. The modified bomber has a maximum speed of 180 km per hour, a range of 660 km, and a payload of 1,000 kg. Looking at the incoming bombers, the Japanese army launched a second wave of attack. The 2nd Artillery Squadron, which had already lost 3 guns, began to roar again. I don't know if it's because of the arrival of air support, their gunners are more motivated than before, and their firing rate has increased by a certain amount. In their eyes, the artillery on the opposite side is already a lamb waiting to be slaughtered. It has not been long since they jumped. The victory still belongs to them. Kill to give. The morale-boosting 76th Squadron launched an attack under the cover of artillery fire. Drawing on the lessons of the previous 73rd Squadron, their lines are more dispersed, which can minimize the risk of shelling casualties. Captain, the Little Devil's plane has arrived. Should we have the artillery shift their positions and hide it? The captain shook his head and said calmly, no need, let them continue to suppress the Japanese artillery fire according to the original plan. The Little Devil's planes will be cleaned up by their own people. The speed of Little Devil's Type 87 bomber was very slow, and it was only when the fierce battle broke out again that they finally arrived at the position above. Why are these people so ferocious? After seeing the comparison of firepower between the two sides on the ground, the bomber squadron was not surprised. But they didn't take it seriously. Under the fierce ground firepower, they will all turn into a pile of parts under their bombs. Lower the altitude, this time we are carrying small bombs to improve the bombing accuracy a bit. The pilot plane took the lead in lowering the altitude, which is only about 2,000 meters above the ground at this moment. At this altitude, even anti-aircraft machine guns are unlikely to pose a significant threat to them. Just as the Japanese bomber fleet was preparing for bombing. The Anti-Aircraft Artillery Regiment on the ground lifted the white canvas covering the 88-gun body. One by one, the black muzzle was aimed at the sky. The Type 87 bomber, with a height of about 2,000 meters and a maximum speed of only 180 km per hour, was seen by them as similar to the target, even slower than the target. Moreover, it is still a big target like bombers. Shooting. 54 88mm anti-aircraft guns began to fire in unison. Shells roared out of the barrel, enveloping 12 Japanese bombers. Suddenly, in the midst of the Japanese bomber group, shells with delayed fuses exploded. In an instant, an Type 87 bomber was hit by 2 shells, one of which directly hit the left wing. The bomber crashed towards the ground in thick smoke before dropping its bombs. Anti-aircraft guns, they actually have large-caliber anti-aircraft guns, evasive. Feeling the shaking of the seats caused by the explosion, the Japanese bomber squadron immediately panicked. However, in about 10 seconds, 2 Type 87 bombers were hit and crashed one after another. Now the Little Devil's flight team can't care too much, hastily throwing down the bombs in the magazine and starting to pull up and avoid them. Multiple bombers threw bombs directly onto their own people's heads. The sight left Kimura Bingtaro stunned. Nanny. It's impossible. It's absolutely impossible. Where did people get their anti-aircraft guns? Seeing the 4th bomber crash, Hiro Kimura's heart was dripping with blood. He knew that the land airline might have failed this time, and the next battle would depend on them. At this moment, the 2nd Flying Squadron is unable to protect itself, and there is still time to support ground operations. After losing the threat from the air, the pressure on Ituan's body suddenly decreased. The dense firepower continuously reaped the Japanese army's living strength. Their charge appeared so powerless before such fierce firepower. P.S. During the New Book period, there are 8,000 words updated every day. Please understand, and also ask for a wave of flowers and evaluation votes. Chapter 7. Check-in Tank Regiment, T.34 Tank. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. The independent 2nd Flying Squadron of the Guangdong Army faced an attack from 54 88mm guns, leaving behind 6 Type 87 bombers before leaving in disarray. And the ground combat has also entered a white heat. At this moment, the Japanese army, facing fierce firepower, still has no intention of retreating, but continue to charge forward without killing anyone. Because they are only about 100 meters away from the position at this moment. The front of the position was also covered with their corpses. Some Japanese soldiers even used corpses in front of their positions as cover to suppress their firepower. At this moment, multiple 105mm caliber high explosive grenades landed at a distance of 1 to 200 meters in front of the position and exploded. Under the bombardment of large caliber shells, an empty space was suddenly blasted out among the Japanese charging troops. All that remains are bullet pits, as well as the broken limbs and bodies of the little devils. Although the Japanese army was at a disadvantage in firepower, they still put considerable pressure on the regiment without any artillery advantage. Huanran chose stability as the main focus and asked the artillery from the 2nd Rear Regiment to support the 1st Regiment. The M101 105mm howitzer has a maximum range of 11 kilometers and is fully capable of shelling Japanese troops from the rear. But even without the support of artillery, a regiment can still hold on to this first position. Thompson has come up, everyone who needs to change guns should change guns. On each position, a regiment had already placed a weapon box for Thompson submachine guns. It is to achieve absolute firepower suppression against the Japanese army in close combat. The firepower of the Chicago typewriter is quite strong, with a combat firing rate of 720 rounds and an effective range of up to 200 meters. When a soldier picks up a Thompson submachine gun, the Japanese army felt what absolute firepower was. Amidst the dense bullets, these tracer bullets shot towards the Japanese army like chains of fire. The Japanese army's 38th Great Wall was completely knocked down and couldn't lift its head. In the following time, 100 meters will be a difficult line for Japanese attack groups to cross. Finally, unable to withstand casualties, the Japanese 76th Regiment retreated. When they retreated to the rear, the fully staffed 3,800-member coalition had only about 3,000 left so far, and a battalion's strength was almost depleted. This injury also made the captain of the 76th United a bit scared. Are they really dealing with weak people? Why is their firepower so fierce? At this moment, Murakami Bingtaro was furious. Ba Georgia Road, damn it, that Zhang Xiaolu is damn it. He has equipped all the rapid-fire weapons of the Northeast Army to these people, hoping to use this method to stop us. Command the troops to continue the attack and let them know the strength of the Imperial Army. In the following time, the Japanese army launched waves of charge after wave. But apart from leaving corpses in front of the position, there is still no storage. However, Murakami Bingtaro did not become furious, but instead showed a faint smile on his face. Because he found that the firepower of a regiment's position was weaker than before, and it was still getting weaker and weaker. What does this mean? It means they don't have many bullets left. Looking at the sun about to set, he nodded and said, "Stop the attack and prepare for a night attack on the Zhejiang position." What is the current casualties of the troops? Brigade Commander, 73rd Squadron suffered 874 casualties, 76th Squadron suffered 1147 casualties, 2nd Artillery Squadron lost 7 Type 91 howitzers, and artillery suffered 57 casualties. After hearing this number, Murakami Bingtaro, who didn't take his soldiers' life seriously, also felt dizzy. 2,000 people were injured or killed in just one afternoon. You should know that their brigade is only over 5,000 people, and they are almost catching up with half of the people. But he won't give up because he has seen the dawn of victory. Huanran looked at the officer packing up and said, "That's almost it. Let's have a regiment evacuate the position at 10 ignition speed, move the defense line to Taozhuang, and then wait for the emperor to enter the urn. His proactive retreat, the arrogant Japanese army will definitely think they are not capable. He will definitely thrust into the pocket he set up in Taozhuang." Moreover, the task of the Zhejiang defense line was to consume a wave of Japanese forces, and it has now been achieved. In the early hours of the morning, the Japanese 73rd Squadron charged up to the position without firing a single shot, successfully occupying this unguarded group of positions. Did the people retreat? Murakami's eyes flickered before he smiled and said, "Yoshi, they must not be able to keep up with their ammunition. Let the soldiers rest overnight and launch an attack on Shanhaiguan tomorrow morning." After a while, an officer walked in and said, "Brigade Commander, our reinforcements have arrived." Upon hearing this, Murakami Bingtaro exclaimed with joy, "How could they have come so quickly? That's great. I'll personally go and greet them." And Zhang Xueming has once again welcomed a new day of check.in. Nowadays, he waits for the check.in to be completed before going to bed every day, otherwise he will always be thinking about the reward for check.in. Successful check.in, congratulations on obtaining the T-34 tank regiment. Seeing this reward, Zhang Xueming was very excited. Finally, the tank unit was signed in. Now he has more confidence in annihilating the enemy's 38th Brigade. Then he immediately checked the T-34 tank regiment. It has 3 tank battalions, 1 self-propelled tank battalion, as well as a battalion headquarters, armored maintenance company, logistics support company, health company, mechanized reconnaissance company, and mechanical engineering unit company. The entire regiment is equipped with 65 T.34/85 medium tanks and 21 Su-100 tank fighters. Order an independent tank regiment to quickly move north to reinforce the new division for combat, temporarily under the command of the new division. Chapter 8. Huanran's shock. What kind of tank is this? You are listening at novelfull.audio. Huanran, who had just fallen asleep at the new command center, was awakened. He looked at his guard with some anger, suppressing his anger as he woke up and said, "What's the point of waking me up?" The guard looked at the slightly angry division commander and quickly said, "Division commander, there is a new army coming from Shanhaiguan, all tanks." After hearing this, Huanran couldn't sit still and quickly got up, starting to put on clothes. "Hurry up, help me get my coat over here, hurry up a bit." When Huanran arrived at the temporary camp in the rear, tanks from the independent tank regiment continued to enter. The tank looked exceptionally clear under the illumination of the lights. He was shocked by his massive size, long and thick barrel, heavy armor, and roaring engine, and his pupils shrank. He has seen tanks before, such as the FT.17 Renault light tank from the Gallic Rooster. When he saw the Renault tank, it was shaking uncontrollably. If their troops were to face such armored vehicles, they would have no fighting power. At that time, he realized that tanks might be the king of the future battlefield. However, the Renault tank appears so petite in front of these tanks that it is not even of the same level. After all, the Renault tank is a light tank weighing only about 7 tons, with a short-barrel 37mm gun as its main gun. In front of the T.3485 medium tank, it is naturally vulnerable. After regaining his senses, Huanran asked in an excited tone, "What is its name? How powerful is it?" Xie Jin, the commander of the tank 1st Regiment wearing a tank soldier uniform next to him, smiled. "It is called T-34 tank, equipped with an 85mm caliber tank gun, with a total combat weight of 32 tons. The frontal armor alone is 90mm thick, and it can run up to 55 yards. Being able to fight, run, and with such heavy armor, it is like a king on the battlefield." After hearing these data, Huanran immediately took a deep breath. Its power has completely overturned his understanding of tanks. After all, T-34/85 is a product of 43 years, leading the current 11 years. Then he looked at these tanks with a bright and lively gaze, and couldn't help but say hello. With this tank unit, it seems not difficult to completely annihilate a 38th Regiment. And when it saw the Su.100 tank destroyer behind it, it once again plunged him into shock. That night, Huanran didn't sleep at all and stayed at the tank camp studying these two tanks. It wasn't until after 6 o'clock, when it was almost dawn, that I reluctantly rushed back to the headquarters. According to the report from the frontline reconnaissance unit, the Japanese 38th Brigade arrived near Taozhuang half an hour ago and seemed to be preparing to launch an attack. The headquarters of the new 1st Division is located on a mountain behind the Taozhuang position. Huanran can overlook the entire battlefield from here. When the time comes to around 8 o'clock, 2 Japanese squadrons have arrived at their positions. Kimura Bingtaro clung his command knife and looked at the vaguely visible Taozhuang position in the distance, his smile never stopping. Standing next to him was a high-ranking officer, but he was able to fight alongside Murakami Bingtaro, which also shows that his identity was not simple. And he was the captain of the Japanese Temporary Field Artillery Battalion, Mureo Yamano. This heavy artillery battalion is equipped with 12 Type 38 150mm howitzers. Arrived in Suizhong early this morning to support the 38th Mixed Brigade in combat. It was precisely the arrival of this heavy artillery battalion that made Murakami Bingtaro so confident. After yesterday's battle, he has figured out the firepower configuration of this unit. There are many machine guns, and it seems to be equipped with an unknown model of rifle. This rifle can shoot continuously without the need for a bolt, which piqued his interest. On the artillery, most of the equipment is mortars, with only a few heavy artillery pieces. If he adds the 2nd Artillery Squadron, there are more than 10 heavy artillery pieces on his side. They have an advantage in quantity and a greater advantage in caliber. They carefully selected the artillery positions this time and will definitely not suffer any losses. The positions set up by these people are really simple. It is impossible to defend our howitzers. It seems that there is no problem to win the Shanhaiguan customs today. The Yamano Murakami looked at the rudimentary Taozhuang position and said with a proud expression. He has always looked down upon people. In his eyes, they are just a group of cowardly East Asian sick men. Kimura Bingtaro agreed and said, with the support of your heavy artillery, it won't be a problem to win a small Shanhaiguan. Let's prepare for battle, please provide half an hour of artillery support. Shanai Murakami nodded confidently and said, Your Excellency, Major General, please watch our performance. New Division. Huanran looked at the latest intelligence received from the artillery reconnaissance plane. A Japanese artillery unit was deployed in a valley, with a total of 12 large-caliber heavy guns. It seems that this is the 8th artillery from the Japanese army. But their arrival will not change the situation at all. It's just an additional target for delivering groceries. As the hands on the watch reached exactly 7.30, Huanran picked up the phone and said calmly, I'm Huanran. I command you to start collecting the net. Within the Shanhaiguan Pass, behind a wide flat area, large-caliber heavy guns are positioned above the gun positions. This time, in order to deal with this 38 Mixed Brigade, Huanran concentrated all the caliber artillery of the entire division. 3 light artillery battalions and 3 regimental artillery units, totaling 54 105mm howitzers. A heavy artillery battalion equipped with a total of 12 M1A1 155mm heavy howitzers. In addition, there is a heavy artillery battalion equipped with a total of 12 M1 240mm heavy cannons. This is one of Huanran's killer moves this time. A caliber of 240mm, which can be described as destroying the sky and earth with just one shot, is not excessive. Enough to blow up the little devil with a concussion. When Huanran's order was issued, the artillery positions fired with thousands of guns. Bang, bang, bang. A series of large-caliber cannons roared in agony, and shells came out of their barrels, roaring towards the Japanese army in the distance. The scene of the volley was extremely shocking. Especially the salvo of 12 240mm heavy cannons raised a cloud of smoke and dust, as if they were about to pierce through the sky. P.S. Please ask the readers to give some feedback, and the wealthy little hands can order some flowers and feedback. Thank you for your support. Chapter 9. Tank. What kind of tank is this? You are listening at novelfull.audio. What sound? The captain of the 73rd Squadron was currently inspecting the attacking troops when he suddenly heard a series of whining sounds coming from above. Everyone couldn't help but look up online, but just this one glance almost scared their souls out. I saw shells roaring towards them in the sky. The scorching shells flew in the air, leaving a long trail at the tail. Like a meteor falling, dozens of 105mm caliber shells rained down from the sky. The team leader's pupils shrank directly into the tip of a needle, and his heart almost stopped. Artillery. A mournful scream came from his mouth. In an instant, the gathering place of the 73 squadrons became the infernal sea of fire. The shells exploded densely in the crowd, and the flames of the explosion kept rising, harvesting the lives of the Japanese. The coverage shooting power of 54 105mm howitzers is still quite strong. And the other 12 155mm howitzers and 12 240mm cannons targeted the Japanese artillery units. 24 large-caliber high-explosive howitzers roared like locomotives and smashed towards the Japanese artillery position set up behind a valley. Here, the Japanese army concentrated 18 artillery pieces, with each gun position spaced apart. Cannons and shells were separated, and defensive fortifications were dug at each artillery position. However, when a 240mm caliber grenade hit them, these defensive structures appeared so fragile. Artillery. The Japanese army was deploying artillery and excavating artillery positions, looking in fear at the incoming shells. In their desperate and frightened eyes, more than 10 155mm howitzers fell first. Suddenly, the entire artillery position was shrouded in artillery fire. Bomb! 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 The accuracy of the artillery of the new 1st Division was quite high, even without calibration, it accurately covered the entire Japanese artillery position. In less than 10 seconds, 12 240mm high-explosive howitzers fell. The killing power of such a shell is enough to cover the size of a football field. Bang, bang, bang. The earth is shaking and the mountains are crumbling, like the end of the world. At this moment, it can completely be used to describe the scene of Japanese artillery positions. Under the coverage of 240mm shells, the artillery positions built by the Japanese army looked so ridiculous. Under the massive explosion, multiple Japanese 150mm heavy howitzers were either overturned by the massive explosion or disintegrated in close-range explosions. After the first round of shelling ended, the Japanese artillery positions were in a mess. Everywhere were scattered Japanese soldiers, artillery that had been thrown off or exploded into parts. Even a sturdy 150mm cannon cannot withstand the close-range explosion of a 240mm shell. This is impossible. How could this be? The sudden shelling blinded the Japanese 38th Mixed Brigade. The village man who was once extremely proud was now even more stunned and shocked as he watched this scene. Then he suddenly turned his head to look at Major General Murakami Bintaro, his eyes seeming to be cannibalistic. "Your Excellency, Brigade Commander. Is this the cowardly Northeast Army you told me about? Is this what you said about heavy artillery with less than 10 guns?" The 73rd Squadron was hit by heavy artillery coverage, and his artillery position was hit by large-caliber heavy artillery. Although he didn't know the exact quantity, he could tell from the density of the two shelling. The opponent is equipped with at least 40 artillery pieces, all of which are heavy artillery pieces of at least 100 mm or more. Kimura Bingtaro's face was full of shock, and his eyes were even more dazed. Then he suddenly reacted. Ba Jie, we're probably caught in the trap. The other party suddenly took the initiative to launch shelling, and also concealed so many large-caliber heavy artillery. This is probably a signal to launch a general attack. And they are probably already in an encirclement. Immediately organize all troops to move in at a fast pace. At this moment, Kimura Bingtaro is as anxious as ants on a hot pot. The shelling continued, with artillery positions pouring shells at a rate of 1.2 rounds per minute towards the target Japanese army. The 73rd Squadron, shrouded in artillery fire, can no longer be described as miserable. Their gathering place was originally broad, with no obstruction or cover around. Encountering such a large scale shelling in the wilderness, and still using a 105 mm howitzer, the scene can be imagined. After multiple rounds of shelling, the entire 73rd Squadron was scattered, with their bodies and craters everywhere. And this is the appetizer, the real main course has arrived. Huanran looked at the Japanese 73rd Squadron shrouded in artillery fire, with a smile on his lips. Order the 1st Tank Regiment to launch an attack, with the 1st and 2nd Regiments providing cover, and first annihilate this Japanese coalition. Command the 3rd Regiment to launch an attack, intercept the Little Devil's retreat, surround them in this Tao Zhuang, and make it their cemetery. After receiving the order, all the troops took action. Bang, bang, bang. The diesel engine burst out with surging power, and T-34 medium-sized tanks jumped out of the battlefield one by one. Like a fierce tiger descending the mountain, the roarer approached the Japanese 73rd Regiment shrouded in artillery fire. The coordinated operation of infantry and cannons is just a basic training subject for the new division. What is that? The movement on this side of the Taozhuang position immediately caught the attention of Japanese investigators. However, when they saw tanks driving on flat snow and groups of attacking troops behind them, they were immediately stunned. Tank, what kind of tank is this? Kimura Bingtaro and Yamano Murado also saw this scene through telescopes. The torrent of steel swept through them, causing great shock and impact. They have seen tanks before, as neon lights in industrial countries are equipped with a small number of tanks. But their tanks were like little puddings in front of these tanks. Is it true that the people in front of them are people? But now is not the time to discuss these issues. With such a large-scale attack, their 38 Mixed Brigade is probably in imminent danger. Please send a request for assistance report to the Guangdong Army Command immediately, hurry up. Chapter 10. This is a battle without suspense. You are listening at novelfull.audio. As the shelling ended, the soldiers of the 73rd Squadron, who were shrouded in gunfire, finally breathed a sigh of relief. In this shelling that lasted for nearly 20 minutes. One shell after another was smashed down as if it were free of money. They also suffered significant losses in this shelling, with at least nearly 500 casualties. And their team's combat personnel have also been reduced to below 2,000. The smoke hovering over them has not yet dissipated. When the Japanese army, lying in the snowy plains and bullet pits, heard the gathering whistle and prepared to get up. Suddenly, I felt the ground tremble slightly, as if it was about to shake. A slight roar also came from ahead of them. At this moment, they coincidentally looked towards the direction of the sound. But they saw a scene that drove them crazy. Steel behemoths, towering with huge gun barrels, swept towards them on the snowy plain. The Independent Tank Regiment, 1st Regiment, and 2nd Regiment are now divided into 3 groups of regular soldiers and are attacking the 73rd Regiment. Nanny! What is this? When Japanese military officers saw this scene, they had no idea what it was. It was not until after the Blitzkrieg that the world realized the prowess of tanks and established their status as land kings. The captain of the 73rd team looked at the incoming new division with bloodshot eyes. He immediately pulled out his command knife and shouted. All the brigades immediately gathered their troops to fight back, so that these stupid and cowardly people can see the power of the imperial warriors. He didn't realize how powerful the tank was. He only knows the courage of imperial soldiers, who can defeat all enemies. And as long as they engage in a melee with the opponent, their artillery will not dare to fire at them. He would rather die on the road of charge than be suffocated and blown alive. Kill to give. Soon, under the leadership of Japanese officers, a famous Japanese soldier jumped out of the crater and bunker and launched a countercharge towards the tank battalion in front. The leader of a T-34 tank looked at the Japanese soldiers rushing towards them in surprise. Are these little devils so brave? But he quickly reacted and shouted, "Combat!" After the sight was aimed at the Japanese charging crowd, the gunner fired without hesitation. A precise 85 mm shell fell into the midst of the Japanese army's deadly charge. Bomb! The shells exploded with a loud bang, and the Japanese army located at the center of the explosion was shrouded in a mist of blood. With just one shot, 6 or 7 little devils were reimbursed directly. However, this vacancy was quickly filled by the little devils rushing up from behind. As the first tank fired, the tanks behind also roared together. One shell fell into the Japanese crowd and exploded with a loud roar. But this still did not stop the Japanese army from charging towards death. Under the brainwashing of the Bushido spirit, these veteran Japanese soldiers are no longer afraid of life and death. When there were still hundreds of meters between the two sides, the 2 DT machine guns of the T-34 tank began to hiss. The dense bullets burst out with extremely strong firepower in an instant. The Japanese army rushing at the forefront were all swept to the ground. Under intense shooting, Zhang Xueming restrained the Japanese army's charge. At this moment, the little devils also launched a counterattack. Their surviving grenade launchers, light and heavy machine guns, and even 38 large lids were firing towards these sweeping steel currents. However, their counterattack appeared so ridiculous beneath the heavy armor of the T-34 tank. But at this moment, the Japanese army who had already killed Red Eyes would not care about these things. Kill to give. For the sake of His Majesty the Emperor. On board. When there were still 200 meters between the two sides, the little devils became even crazier. Their eyes glared fiercely at the T-34 tank ahead. At this moment, the infantry following behind the tank opened fire. The sound of the M1 Garland semi-automatic rifle echoed like a popping bean. After filling and emptying a magazine, soldiers who were half kneeling or shooting upright quickly followed the attacking team. Regardless of whether or not you can hit at this distance, just shoot the bullet out and create enough fierce firepower. After all, the snowflakes raised by the tank's movement made it impossible for them to see the situation ahead clearly. This is the real battlefield, even a sharpshooter cannot eliminate an enemy with one shot. Soon, the two torrents collided with each other. The Japanese 73rd Squadron, which had already reduced its personnel to around 1,000, was immediately overturned. At this time, the other two tanks also flanked from both sides. They have formed an encirclement around the 73rd team. The battle is completely one-sided, under the cover of infantry. Before the little devil could approach the tank, he was swept to the ground by the machine guns, rifles, submachine guns, and light machine guns on the tank. At this moment, the fierce firepower of the new division was fully unleashed. This encirclement battle against the 73rd Regiment did not last long. At this moment, Taketaro Kimura has no concern for the 73rd Squadron ahead. He knew that the annihilation of the 73rd Squadron had become a foregone conclusion. So he simply abandoned the 73rd team and let them stay behind. That's also why 73 United didn't break through. And he retreated with other troops. As long as they rush to the railway station behind them, they can retreat by taking the military train that is parked there. However, as they retreated less than 2 kilometers under gunfire, they encountered the 3rd Infantry Regiment and the Tank Battalion directly under the division blocking ahead. The direct tank battalion consisted of 76 cubic meters Stuart light tanks and M4 Sherman medium tanks arranged directly in a row, like a steel city wall blocking their retreat. Behind these tanks were over 3,600 soldiers from the 3rd Regiment. When Kimura Bingtaro saw this scene, he knew he might not be able to go back this time. The nearest reinforcements to them are all in Jinzhou. But he will never surrender. The Empire only has warriors, there are no cowards who are greedy for life and afraid of death. Carry out on-site defense and prepare for battle. The 3rd commander used a telescope to observe the Japanese army spreading out, preparing to use various shelters as defensive fortifications. He waved his hand directly and said, "Order the tank battalion to attack, and each battalion will follow the tanks in battle. Concentrate all artillery to shoot at the Japanese army and cover the advance of the troops." The 3rd Regiment sounded the signal of this annihilation battle. M3 Stuart light tanks and M4 Sherman medium tanks were launched one by one, forming a steel flood that swept towards the Japanese mixed 38th Brigade. Mortars and howitzers from the rear fired in unison, and dense shells hit the Japanese army. This is a battle without suspense. P.S. On a new day, I am looking for a wave of flowers and evaluation tickets. Monthly tickets can also be thrown over. Thank you for your support.